All right, everybody, how's it going? Welcome to another episode. For those of you who are new to the channel, we've had a little bit of difficulty. So I don't even know if this one's going to be live, but just in case it isn't, I am also recording it and I'll upload it later. So welcome to Write With Me, live screenwriting from scratch, day 20, 90s police tactics for Garvin Hackett. So for those of you who are new to the channel, welcome to live screenwriting, the Ballad of Garvin Hackett. It's a movie script being written completely from scratch. The logline, the Ballad of Garvin Hackett, is an ironic, darkly comic take on action 90s movies. Forrest Gump meets Scarface, directed by Sidney Lumet, so the laws of physics actually apply. Instead of going to a traditional development route, I'm writing this movie in public directly for you to visualize later as a cinematic graphic novel. So grab a notebook or a keyboard and write along with me. If you're in the chat, come say hello. Although, I don't know if that's going to be possible with this particular one, since we seem to be offline. And if you want to follow on from the beginning, check out the Liminal Boundaries Channel. All right. So you can see the link in the description down below. So let's do this. So last time we were looking at our character, Whitey Jackson. He's a career criminal, and he was born and raised in Overtown, Liberty City area in the 70s and 80s. The story takes place in 1990 to 1994, 1995 in South Florida. So what we've got here is a lot of interesting tidbits that came up. And we're going to come back to that to polish it off, but it really gave us a little bit of depth to his history. And the fun thing is that every time he gets out of prison, there's a riot. And then he goes back to prison. So his life has been like prison, riot, prison, riot, prison, riot. So he's pretty hardened. All right. But we have some research questions, and there's a lot of things we haven't spoken about with the police. So this is what the focus of our research is going to be today. So a couple of questions. What was the situation with the police, the federal task force in 1994 regarding drugs, gangs, and crime, the structures, and the characters? We really need to know who they were to give a realistic world in 1994. And then what is the situation with Janet Reno? I know she was up and coming at a certain point because I met her. And what were inmate calls recorded or surveilled in the 90s when they called from prisons? By what means would Whitey have to communicate with the Vanta gang with reasonable privacy? Would he have a small contraband cell phone? How would it work? And then what is Whitey's record of crimes? He must have killed somebody by the time the story starts. I sort of put like armed robbery and accessory, but it is a good question. Is like, it would be an interesting thing to look at, like, what are the most common kinds of crimes for somebody in his position to end up in his position? Like, what kind of rap sheet would he have? All right, so we can start right away because we've got the search pane, and I'm going to refresh the channel while we're here. Yeah, it seems like we're live. That's interesting. All right. So let's see. We're going to Google Gemini. I like Google Gemini because Gemini is fast. It responds quickly. So let's see what the first question is. Let me see. Was I prescient enough? No, I wasn't prescient enough. Let's see. Question was, yeah, what was the situation in the police? Yeah, all right. I'll just paste it in here. You guys can see it. What was the situation with the police Fed task force in 1994 regarding drug gangs and crime? The structure, the characters. What I'll put here. My understanding is the Booby Boys were one of the big gangs, and it would be interesting to know if they had a rival gang and what the name of that gang was. Also the major names in the law enforcement side. Let's see. And while that's searching, I'm just going to try to see what happens if I click here. Name of that gang was. Also the major names in the law enforcement side. Wow, so I am live. That's pretty cool. So I sound weird to myself. All right, let's see. The mid-1990s in Miami were an incredibly bloody era defined by a massive spike in drug-related homicides. It was the peak of crack cocaine epidemic's second wave, where the wild Miami Vice era of the 1980s had evolved into highly structured neighborhood-based street gangs that operated with corporate efficiency and military-grade firepower. The criminal landscape. You are spot on about the Booby Boys. Named after their leader's nickname, they were one of the most powerful and ruthless drug trafficking organizations in South Florida during this time, moving tons of cocaine and operating heavily in areas like Carroll City, Liberty City, and Overtown. All right. Rivalry, the Booby Boys versus Vonda's gang. The Booby Boys' main bloodiest rivalry was with an outfit known as Vonda's gang. Throughout the mid and late 1990s, these two factions engaged in a savage turf war over control of Miami's lucrative drug markets. The specific feud was responsible for over 40 murders and 100 non-fatal shootings, turning neighborhoods into active combat zones. The violence was indiscriminate. One of the most infamous flashpoints of their war occurred at the Colors apartment complex, where a crossfire execution killed 2 rival dealers and a 5-year-old boy. What's a crossfire execution? Key characters. Kenneth Booby Williams, a.k.a. Black. We've got him. We've got the name. Mastermind of the Booby Boys. He partnered up with another major dealer, Efrain Casada, a.k.a. E4, after the two met in prison in 1992. Together, they merged their independent network into a massive, heavily armed syndicate. So that's going straight into my notes. Boom. Let's put that into notes. Okay. Let's see. Vonda, the ruthless female leader of Vonda's gang. She matched Williams in ferocity, and her foot soldiers kept the streets of Miami red for years, trying to defend and expand her drug corners. So I'm not going to do Vonda because this is a retcon piece. We're just doing the Booby Boys. And this is like if the Booby Boys would have been eliminated by Vanta, which is the Joel's gang, the French transplant. Let's see. Law enforcement, side and task forces. By 1994, local police realized they were completely outgunned and overwhelmed by the body count. Local homicide units couldn't keep up with the sheer volume of retaliatory drive-bys. The strategy shifted towards federal joint task forces. Law enforcement realized the only way to dismantle these multi-state networks was to combine local street intelligence with federal resources, which allowed them to use powerful federal conspiracy and RICO laws. Okay, so we've got something here. Federal Joint Task Force. That sounds like an entity worth writing down. Let's get that. Go to the research questions. Pop that down there. The structure was built on specialized multi-agency units, the HIDTA, High-Intensity Drug Trafficking Areas Task Force. How did they pronounce that? Created by Congress. These pooled resources from DEA, ATF, IRS, Miami-Dade Police, and City of Miami Police. The Homicide Task Force. A hyper-focused joint team of veteran local homicide detectives paired directly with federal agents and federal prosecutors. Instead of just treating a shooting as an isolated local murder, they investigated them as murders in furtherance of a continuing criminal enterprise, which carries the federal death penalty or mandatory life in prison. Perfect. Okay. And then we'll take specialized multi-agency units. We're giving names to the concepts. That's what's really important. You gotta, when you're writing, you know, it's good to know what kind of concepts you're dealing with, right? It just helps form your vision. So key characters, law enforcement. Tony Monheim, a legendary Miami-Dade homicide sergeant who spearheaded the joint task force that ultimately investigated and dismantled both the Booby Boys and Vonda's gang. He later detailed a grueling multi-year investigation in his book, The Booby Boys. Okay. So Tony Monheim, we got a character here. We're going to come back to him. We don't have any major, police characters in the movie. But it's more like Goodfellas where they're spread out. The federal prosecutors, assistant U.S. attorneys like David Loftus, were instrumental on the legal side. They used the massive stacks of local police evidence to build airtight federal indictments against dozens of gang members at once, resulting in a landmark 31-day trial in 2000 that permanently took down the Booby Boys network. Wow. Okay, so This would have taken them down 6 years earlier in Garvin's world. Let's go. Okay. Let's go back to here. Legacy of the 1994 era was the realization that street gangs had outgrown city limits. Created to take down the Booby Boys. Using federal task force to create street gangs like the Mafia became gold standard for federal gang crackdowns across the United States. Okay. So we have enough interesting stuff going on here. Let's see the next research question. I'm just going to do a big pass over the top. I heard something in the background. Do a big pass and see if we need more details. We'll dig in later. Okay. So we got that. All right. What was the situation with Janet Reno? When did she come into the picture? What was the situation with Janet Reno and when did she come into the picture? She'd be like a interesting character. The Janet Reno situation is unique because she sat exactly at the intersection of local Miami prosecutor and national federal crackdown. She was a pivotal figure in shaping how law enforcement dealt with the violent drug crisis of that era. When did she come into the picture? Janet Reno was a fixture in Miami law enforcement long before 1994. From 1978 to 1993, Reno came into the picture not on a massive scale when she was appointed state attorney for Dade County, now Miami-Dade, in 1978. She was the first woman to hold that position in Florida and was subsequently reelected 5 times. For 15 years, her office was responsible for prosecuting the city's exploding docket of homicides, drug trafficking, and violent crimes during the height of the cocaine cowboy era. In 1993, right as the brutal turf wars began between gangs like the Booby Boys and the Vondas gang were escalating to their worst peaks, Reno transitioned to the national stage. In March 1993, President Bill Clinton appointed her as the United States Attorney General, making her the nation's first female Attorney General. So just as the poop hit the fan, she bailed. Smart. Like a politician. Reno's move from Miami's top local prosecutor to head of the entire U.S. Department of Justice fundamentally changed how the government fought gangs. In 1994, because she had spent over a decade on the ground in Miami, she understood intimately that local police were entirely overwhelmed by the drug wars. When she took over the DOJ, her situation and strategy shifted in 2 major ways that directly impacted the mid-90s task forces. Weaponizing federal resources. Reno knew that the police departments lacked the jurisdictional reach and money to take down multi-state drug networks. As Attorney General, she heavily championed and expanded the joint federal-local task force model. She authorized federal agencies under her command, like the DEA and the FBI, to pool their resources with local police departments. Miami-Dade homicide. This specific strategy is what allowed the investigators to eventually bring massive federal conspiracy and RICO charges. Okay. Focus on violent career criminals. While Reno became famous for promoting innovative rehabilitation programs, such as spearheading the Miami Drug Court to divert nonviolent drug users into treatment, she took a hyper-aggressive stance against violent gangs. She used the federal authority to focus heavily on career criminal units, ensuring that gang members caught using military-grade weapons or committing retaliatory homicide faced federal mandates, which carried stiffer penalties and no chance of early parole. Reno was the bridge. She brought her first-hand trauma and tactical experience from Miami's bloody streets to Washington, D.C., providing a high level of federal backing that local task forces desperately needed to finally dismantle the city's most violent empires. Okay. So she's going to be maybe in the background. More like a background actor in this. All right. Janet Reno. Let's see. Okay. Now, let's go back to... Actually, let's go back to here, and let's see what we got in here. Let's see what we got in the next research question. We got the situation with Janet Reno. Okay. I think these two are kind of both very similar of how the communication happens. Let's see if something happens there. Um, all right. Let's see if it remembers this session who Whitey is. Or if Gemini thinks I'm talking about Whitey as like white people. The short answer is yes. Inmates were heavily monitored and recorded in the late 90s. In fact, the 1990s was the exact decade when automated digital recording system for prison payphones became standard industry practice across federal and state facilities. Inmate calls in the 1990s, surveillance and monitoring. By 1994, the law was very clear. Courts routinely held that inmates had zero expectation of privacy on prison phones, except for prearranged, unrecorded calls to their attorneys. How surveillance worked back then. Prisons were legally required to post signs next to phones and play a pre-recorded audio prompt at the start of the call informing the inmate that the recipient that the call was being monitored and recorded. Prior to the 90s, guards had to manually listen in or tape calls using cassette recorders. By the 1990s, mid-1990s, private inmate phone companies introduced computer-based systems. These systems could automatically record every call, log the numbers dialed, flag specific keywords, and detect if an inmate tried to use three-way calling to forward the call to an unapproved number. PIN systems. Inmates were assigned personal identification numbers and a restricted list of approved phone numbers. Task forces, like the ones targeting Miami's drug networks, would routinely request the recorded call logs of incarcerated gang members to map out operations on the street. Okay, this is great. So there's a PIN system. We got to figure out how that worked. That's a new question. I'll put this down here. And we'll talk, how did the PIN systems work? When were they introduced? Okay, and we'll go back to that. Did Whitey or gang leaders have contraband cell phones? If a major figure wanted to communicate with Vonda's gang or their own foot soldiers with total privacy, a contraband cell phone was highly unlikely in 1994. The widespread crisis of tiny, easily smuggled plastic smartphones or burner flips did not exist in the 1990s. The size and weight. In 1994, mobile phones were still the size of bricks or heavy, thick clamshells. They had massive, highly visible external antennas and heavy nickel-cadmium batteries. Metal detection. These phones were packed with heavy metal components. Prison security in 1994 was heavily reliant on standard static metal detectors, which would have easily flagged a cell phone of that era. Battery life. Battery life on a 90s phone was abysmal, and charging them in a prison cell without an obvious wall brick adapter would be near impossible. Cellular networks were analog, making signals easy for law enforcement to intercept with basic radio scanners. Since cell phones weren't a viable option, high-level gang leaders and bosses in the 90s relied on older, more sophisticated, and lower-tech methods to bypass prison surveillance. The attorney loophole. This was the premier method for organized crime. Calls and visits between inmates and their legal counsel are constitutionally protected and cannot be recorded or listened to the prison staff. Corrupt defense attorneys, paralegals, or private investigators acted as couriers, carrying explicit operational instructors and hit orders out of prison under the guise of legal paperwork. That's pretty cool. So I like the attorney loophole. Code language. Knowing the phones were recorded, inmates used complex evolving codes. A deliverer of car parts meant a cocaine shipment. A sick family member meant rival who needed to be taken out. That's good. Sick family member. Task forces had to spend months listening to the tapes just to decode the gang's specific slang. Corrupt corrections officers. That's the one that I was thinking of. Rather than smuggling a brick phone, dirty guards were paid thousands of dollars to pass handwritten notes called kites, written in tiny font or code, or to look the other way during contact visits. Visits from clean legals. Gang members who had no criminal records or warrants would visit the prison as approved guests. During contact visits, messages were whispered, or physical notes were subtly passed or swallowed. Okay, so I'm going to copy this just as a background, but this is not what I'm going to use. I think what I like the idea of is, let's see, Actually, let's just go back, see if I got another good research question. So we got this one. What with this one? Okay, Whitey's record and the pin system. Okay, so we can table those for now. I want to ask it more questions about this stuff. In my story, I have a leader, sort of a guy who's got sort of civic visibility. He's a wealthy European guy who owns modeling agencies on South Beach, and he throws parties with wealthy people. He's a French guy, and he's got a plausible story of inheriting wealth from a chemical manufacturing company in Belgium, France. So he's positioned as a legitimate person. And the guy in prison, Whitey, is a career criminal, born and raised in Overtown, just a rap sheet as long as his resume, as a regular person's resume. And so I would imagine that Joel, the French guy, wouldn't go to visit Whitey directly in prison, because it might raise people's eyebrows, right? So I guess I want a way for him to talk to Whitey, and I'm trying to think of something that is grounded in reality. Like, what examples in history do we actually have of people who had similar or adjacent arrangements, so that I can get a sense of what people actually did to breach the gap and communicate. Let's see what it says. First of all, your setup for Joel is brilliantly grounded in reality. Well, thank you. In fact, it heavily mirrors real-life Miami history. During the 1990s South Beach Renaissance, wealthy European men, especially French model scouts and agency owners, dominated the scene, throwing lavish parties where high society seamlessly blended with the criminal underbelly. Your character's archetype fits that specific era perfectly. You are completely right. Joel would never show up at Whitey's prison's visitor log. It creates a paper trail that completely shatters his legitimate front. Historically, to bridge the gap between high society facade and an incarcerated street kingpin, people used highly specific, plausible methods. The historical blueprint, how it was actually done. To understand how Joel and Whitey could communicate with total deniability, we can look at a few historical parallels. Method A, a private investigator paralegal, shadow. This is organized crime. This is how the Italian mafia bosses, Colombian cartel leaders, and high-level street kings historically maintained operational control. Attorneys have attorney-client privilege, meaning their visits and mail cannot be recorded or searched by guards. Organized crime figures realized they could hire defense attorneys who were willing to look the other way or outright corrupt, and have those attorneys hire paralegals or private investigators to handle the prison visits. Joel wouldn't use his personal attorney. Instead, he'd place a shady mid-tier criminal defense lawyer on a heavy monthly retainer. This lawyer hires a freelance private investigator or a paralegal. That investigator goes to the prison, sits face-to-face with Whitey in an unmonitored legal visiting room, takes the instructions, and passes them back up the chain. Joel is entirely insulated. If the PI is caught, the paper trail stops at a random law office. Method B, talent scouting. Since Joel owns a modeling agency, he has a massive resource, a constant influx of young, ambitious, and often vulnerable people. Models, runners, aspiring club promoters who are dependent on him for visas, money, or access to the industry. This mirrors how figures like the notorious French modeling agent Jean-Luc Brunel, who ran agencies in Miami, New York, and was heavily entangled in the Jeffrey Epstein network, used his business as a front to transport, control, and manipulate people. Powerful figures often use young, unsuspecting women as couriers because law enforcement and prison guards are far less suspicious of them. Applications for your story. Joel finds an ambitious street-level girl or low-level club promoter who knows Whitey from the old neighborhood. Joel puts this person on his agency's payroll as a scout. Joel instructs him to visit Whitey under the guise of checking in on an old friend. And the courier gets whispered instructions from Whitey, leaves the prison. Okay. If the cops pull the visitor log, all they see is a local kid. They have no idea she's on the payroll. Method C, third-party pager. If they need to communicate quickly without waiting for a physical visit, they would exploit the specific technology of 1994 pagers and standard prison payphones. In 1994, pagers were lifeblood of the drug trade because prison payphones were recorded and could not call out to pagers directly. Inmates used three-way calling or an outside intermediary. Whitey uses the prison payphone to call a completely clean, low-level burner house in Overtown, run by an old lady or a cousin. Whitey speaks in heavy neighborhood-specific street slang or a prearranged code. The person on the outside takes Whitey's code message and manually pages Joel's personal beeper with a numeric code. Joel receives the numbers on his hip at a high society dinner party, decodes it, and knows exactly what Whitey wants without a single voice recording. Okay. Which method? If you want a legal thriller, go with method A. The dynamic of sleazy Miami lawyer or dirty private investigator trading secrets in a dark prisoning vid is classic noir. Okay. I mean, both of these are good. Juxtaposition of South Beach glamour and Overtown crime, go with method B. Both these are interesting. One could be an interesting connection for Garvin's girlfriend, maybe. Let me see. But that's not really what I'm looking for, because ideally for a dramatic piece, you would want the people to be in the same room, right? But for now, I'll take it. What, did that not work? Okay, I'll try again. Oh man, Windows. Okay. Copy. Oh, that's why. Pasta. Okay. Let me see. Okay. So that's interesting, but I'm actually more interested in showing a conversation between Whitey and Joel. And could that be facilitated by a crooked person bringing a payphone into an attorney meeting, attorney-client privilege, or maybe an attorney having a hearing aid, which is really Joel talking into his ear through a cell phone? I'm trying to just sort of figure out a way to have a meeting where they would actually talk. It's just dramatically tighter and faster because what they say is interpersonal, right? If it was just business, the beeper stuff would make a lot of sense. But this is sort of interpersonal. Having a third-party intermediary might work as well. But it would be cool to be able to have some sort of a scheme, maybe with a corrupt prison official or something, that would allow them to actually have a conversation and it never be recorded in the books. Let's see what they say. If you want a direct interpersonal friction and face-to-face live voice meeting is absolutely the way to go. To keep totally grounded in the actual mechanics of 1994, bypass the technical gadgets. Here's three best historically accurate schemes to get Joel and White in a room or on a live line together completely off the books. The late night maintenance office. This is the holy grail of your story because it puts Joel and Whitey in the exact same room, allowing for physical presence and raw dialogue. It relies entirely on a corrupt, high-ranking prison official who was on Joel's payroll. In 1994, the prison ran on paper logs. If a captain wants an inmate moved, they simply order a guard to pull the inmate from their cell for a random drug test, an administrative interview, or a late-night janitorial detail in the administrative wing. How Joel gets in. Joel doesn't sign in at the front gate. The corrupt captain meets Joel at the rear delivery entrance. Late at night, Joel is handed a clip-on staff ID badge or maintenance uniform. The captain brings Whitey to a dimly lit windowless office basement office or record storage room. Locks the door from the outside and gives them 15 minutes. It's incredibly tense. They're physically in the same space, but they're on Whitey's turf, surrounded by cinder blocks and institutional smell. The dirty attorney's briefcase speakerphone. If Joel absolutely cannot risk entering the prison physically, you can use the attorney-client privilege loophole, but weaponized. The mechanics. A crooked defense attorney visits Whitey in a private legal consultation room. Because it's a legal visit, the guards do not sit in the room and there are no recording devices allowed. The attorney is allowed to bring in a legal briefcase packed with files. Inside the briefcase, hidden under stacks of legal pads, is one of those 1994 bag phones, a portable cellular brick, pre-dialed to Joel's private line. The attorney sets the briefcase on the metal table, opens the lid, clicks speakerphone on low, and steps to the corner of the room to act as a lookout. Whitey is sitting at a steel table, leaning over an open briefcase, talking directly to Joelle, whose voice is coming out of the speaker hidden beneath the legal documents. I like this. Dramatic value. It allows for that immediate, fast-paced interpersonal dialogue. The attorney nervously watching the little window in the door while Whitey and Joelle argue creates a great visual claustrophobia. I really like this one. Yeah, that's the one it's going to be, because it gives Whitey something to do with his hands. Let's see. That's pretty slick. Okay. And we'll go back and see what else they say. Scheme 3. If Whitey is locked down too tight inside the main facility, the easiest place to breach security in the 1990s was during transit. Whitey fakes a medical emergency. Transport van is staffed with 2 guards. Joelle steps into the back of the parked van. This gives you a striking visual contrast. Yeah. Yeah, so of the 3, the prisoner pretending to read legal documents while talking to an open briefcase is hilarious. And Joelle can be somewhere nice to do the contrast. The contrast is pure cinematic gold. Juxtapose the absolute high society luxury of 1994 South Beach with the cold, high anxiety reality of state prison consultation room. Elevates the scene from a standard exposition dump to a dynamic sequence. To capture the true flavor of 1994, the technology itself provides an excellent visible prop. You aren't dealing with modern smartphones, you're dealing with a cellular bag phone. I'm copying this, baby. Putting that into my lookbook, which I'm preparing for you guys, my quote-unquote invisible loyal audience. Let's see. Let's go here. And here. Oh, there's lookbooks. Go to lookbooks. And I have Whitey. I'll do Whitey. Alright. Whitey in the bag phone. Alright. Let's go back. Setting the 2 halves of the scene. The prison consultation room. Whitey is sitting in a windowless room that smells of industrial floor wax. The crooked attorney. I like that, industrial floor wax. Sweating through a cheap suit. Sets down a thick leather hard-shelled briefcase. The snaps on the chrome latches open. Lifts the lid just enough and activates the speakerphone on a Motorola bag phone buried under the legal briefs. Whitey has to lean down over the open leather box, pretending to deeply study a dense page of discovery motions. To an outside guard looking through the window in the heavy steel door, it looks like a standard boring attorney-client review. In reality, Whitey is whispering aggressively into a leather void. Joelle's world. To maximize the contrast, Joelle should be somewhere embodied the peak capital of cool. Let's see, the News Cafe. On a microtack, yeah. The Delano. I'm going to go with the Delano. It's more private. He's got a cabana or something. Washington Avenue, Lincoln Road, high ceilings, white minimalist furniture, black and white headshots of models taped to the walls. Joe is pacing a hardwood floor overlooked on a bustling street. Yeah, I'll go with the Delano, or the Delano, however you want to say it. Let's see. And let's go to the research questions. Okay. And his private office, yes, framing the dialogue dynamic. Because they come from entirely different worlds, but are locked in a high-stakes partnership, the interpersonal friction can shine here. Let's see. I love how Gemini starts to write dialogue for me. Man, tell this French clown to stop playing with my money. On his end, the sound of a camera shutter or ambient loud music fades in. He sips his espresso. Calm yourself, mon ami. Okay. The setup gives you everything. Humor from the absurdity of the briefcase scheme. Immense narrative tension from the crooked attorney acting as a lookout. Crooked attorney. And a striking visual clash between the 2 main characters. Yeah, that's basically what we got. can you generate an image of what this room would look like and what Whitey might be wearing? Let's see. Let's see. Oh. Yeah, because I have to go to the other multimodal account. Alright, I mean... Oh, wait. It's because I'm not signed in. Alright, hold on, guys. Let me sign in and see if I can get this thing to make images for me. 1 second. And we're back. Okay. Let's see if we can do this. Oh, but I lost all that context. Okay, let's see. So, I have a story I'm writing from 1994 in Miami, and I have a crooked French drug guy who's talking to a black guy from Overtown, and they're using a crooked attorney. So the attorney opens a briefcase and he's got a bag phone in there. It's 1993, 1994. He's got a bag phone, and the bag phone has an antenna, and the inmate pretends to be reading legal briefs while the attorney looks out the windows for the cops. And then he's talking into the briefcase. Meanwhile, you see the guy on the beach with his TAC phone, his cell phone, talking to him. So what I want to know is, what does the room in, I'm assuming it would be Glades Correctional Facility in Florida, the Muck. What would a room in 1994 like this have looked like, and what would the inmate have been wearing? And what would the briefcase have looked like that could hold a bag phone? Let's see if it can generate an image. Well, that's doing that. Well, let's see. Can it generate? Make an image. Let's see. All right, it's working. Well, that's working. Let's go back here and go into the research questions, because there's some obvious things that... Okay. So in the beginning, there's a murder. A guy gets blown up. I'd imagine that the task force would be called in. What would the police procedures be in locking down the crime scene? Step by step, just give me like the stages of the crime scene protocols, I suppose. So I got that. I'll do a little research. Oh, there it is. Looks really good, except Whitey's black, but that's okay. I think I told him he's a black guy. They wouldn't do it, would they? Let me see. I think they made him white. Oh, I put black toe, so Gemini didn't. I was like, Gemini, but it's cool. I've got the thing, so let's copy it. Throw that into the lookbook, but let's see. It's green. I remember that color. Okay. That's pretty good, but Whitey is actually black. He's very, very, very dark black. Everything else in the picture looks reasonably realistic, I suppose. But for my lookbook, I need him to be black. He's from Overtown, so he wouldn't be this white Cuban guy, looking guy that you created. Yeah. And let me, while he's working on that, let me copy the research question. So I can go back and see. Just paste it here while it's waiting and kill the image. I have a tabloid reporter showing up, so I want a realistic description, maybe an image as well, of how the crime scene might look. The cars were blown up at a strip mall. Just two identical cars, and just one, the wrong one got blown up, but the police don't know that. Let's see. Oh, there he is. Okay, there's Whitey. So Whitey doesn't look that way in my mind, but it's good enough. It's good enough for what we're doing, which is just creating a look. Creating that look. Alright, we can get rid of the other guy. And let's go back to it. Oopsie. Okay. Please generate an image of what that crime scene might look like. And remember, it's 1994, 1991 is when the car gets blown up. So it would be, all the cars would be 1990 and older, the police cars as well. It's in South Florida in a Miami strip mall. And and the police have the tape up and everything. But also, in addition to generating the image, give me a description of what the tactical sequence is of locking the crime scene down, so I can understand how that works. And how the police would position the cars around the crime scene to control crowds, etc. And other assets around to control crowds and witnesses, spectators, etc. Okay, this is the big one. Let's see if it's going to listen to me, or if it's just going to generate an image. I think it's just going to generate an image. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get started with Claude here. Hey Claude, so I'm working on the Garvin Hackett story again, and I need to know what the tactics are that police would use when a car exploded and somebody was killed in a car bomb. In this case, it's at a strip mall in Miami in 1991. This is the Whitey car bombing. Whitey's long gone, but I need to know what a federal local task force together, how they would approach, how they would find out about it, how they would approach the crime scene, how they would position resources around the crime scene, how they would lock it down, and then eventually how they would clean it up. Can you give me like I guess a crime scene life cycle, very concise, so that I can understand what they would do and what the procedures are? Roger Gust would show up about, a certain amount of time into this, probably early on in the process, relatively. And that's where he finds the charred wallet. Let's see. Let's see, while Claude's working, let's see what... Oh, it did talk. Cool. Oh, wow. That's actually pretty neat. I don't know how realistic this is, but I'll copy, put it in the lookbook. It won't hurt. I can always refine it later. Okay. Let's go back to it. A complex bombing investigation like the 1991 incident you described involves a rapid, multi-stage tactical sequence designed to treat the explosion as both a dynamic event and a preserved crime scene. When a federal and local task force locks down a scene in 1991, they operate with precise stages. Here's a step-by-step breakdown of how that process unfolds, explaining the positioning of assets and personnel you see in the accompanying image. Tactical lockdown, 1991 bombing scene protocol. Stage 1, immediate response and initial perimeter. The moment the blast occurs, first responding units, often local patrol in the 1990 Chevy Caprice and 1991 Ford Crown Vic models, enter the hot zone. I don't think those are Caprices, are they? Oh yeah, they got a Caprice in there. That's cool. Primary objective, schedule the scene from primary and secondary device. Secure the scene from primary and secondary devices while treating the immediate threat as a mass casualty event. They must assume a follow-up device is active. Asset positioning. Units park farther out initially, creating a loose perimeter that they actively expand. The first line is defined by a patrol officer using the red fire line tape or yellow police line do not cross tape. Unspooled rapidly, often from the first trunk they open. This initial tape defines the general area of the blast. In the image, you see this innermost zone around the blackened, destroyed 1980s Ford LTD Crown Vic. Let's take a look. Interesting. Oh, there's Roger. That's awesome. Okay. Stage 2, concentric isolation and federal takeover. 5 to 20 minutes. As specialized assets arrive. Oh. See how we're doing on time. As specialized assets arrive, bomb squad, EOD, and the joint task force, the scene is hard defined. The physical barrier, police cars as walls. Cruisers are positioned nose to tail to form rigid intersecting barriers that physically block roads and sidewalks. This is not just a visual warning, it is designed to physically stop vehicle traffic and control pedestrian access. You can see this in the image where period correct cruisers are positioned to block all key access points to the strip mall. I mean, it's not obvious, but kind of interesting. Okay. Asset positioning, the concentric rings. The inner perimeter, tight yellow tape directly around the crater. Access here is restricted to the EOD, bomb squad, personnel only to clear secondary threats. The outer perimeter. This is where the main task force command sets up, separated by the red fire line tape. The image, this is in the area where the task force command van and several task force sedans are staged. There's a van? Oh yeah, there it is. Cool. The media public zone, cold zone. I see inner, hot, warm, and cold. Okay. This inner boundary is critical. This boundary is critical. It must be positioned far enough back to protect from blast fragmentation and to ensure evidence collection is unimpeded. This is where your tabloid reporter is stationed in the image, pushing against the newly established line. Stage 3, establishing the entry control point. The task force requires absolute documented control of who enters the scene. ECP definition, a single guarded access point is designated a task force asset like the command van or a large early 90s box truck is often positioned here. A log is established. Okay. Special operations, sweeps, and witness management. Okay. Asset positioning assigned to manage spectators. Real target identification. The complex interlocking system of concentric rings. Hard physical barriers and undocumented access is how access was secured before modern digital perimeter management. You are essentially building a small, controlled police state around a specific pile of rubble. All right. Let's see. I just want to copy it. Can I just copy it? Oh. Let's see. I'll just copy it because copy the response. All right. Hopefully it'll paste through. Let's see. We're gonna have a lot to synthesize, but this is a lot of interesting research. Okay, cool. And then I think I have time for one more question before I gotta hop off. Okay, this is great. So what happens if someone like a well-known tabloid reporter shows up either concurrent with the initial responders because they have a scanner, or just after the first police responder gets there? What happens to the reporter? Oh man, it's still creating images. Let's see. Here's the life cycle. Phase 1, notification and initial response, recognition and escalation, perimeter and resource positioning, processing the scene, okay, parallel threads, cleanup and release. Okay, I got that. I'm going to add that to our research stuff. There's going to be a lot to do. That's the thing about research, is the more you do, the more you do. So, but that's cool. Let's see. Okay, so in my story, when Roger Gus shows up, he has a scanner, so he would get there probably right as the first police responders are getting there, or within a few minutes, where they're either just setting up the initial perimeter around the blast or are beginning to set up the additional outside perimeter. So how far could he get, and what could the police do, especially because they know each other and they are all being filmed? Let's see. Let's see what this guy came up with. When a prominent tabloid reporter arrives concurrent with the initial police response, immediate and direct physical control is the primary outcome. The provided image shows how this unfolds step by step during the stage 1 phase. Direct physical containment will move to intercept and physically hold the reporter back. No negotiation. No immediate questioning or detention. The police prioritize scene containment over processing witnesses or spectators. The reporter is not being detained, he's being denied access. Keep well-known people out of the keep everyone out of the hot zone. Okay. Reporters are an immediate priority. The police know professional tabloid reporters likely looking for a money shot. They'll challenge. You can see the reporter. Oh, I'll have to do this later, okay? The officer realizing this. Okay. So give me 1 second. Couple minutes. I need a few minutes. Okay. So, all right, I'll take it. It looks like a cartoon, these images. They're not really photoreal, but they're fun. Let me see, I'll throw that into the lookbook. Okay, so he's in. And then let's go. And I'll just copy this because it's really good. And then we'll do a synthesis session. This has been the 20th, roughly the 20th hour, I guess, that I've been writing this. So it's kind of a milestone. So thank you guys who've been here with me this long. I really appreciate it. And one of the cool things about this channel is it's not really optimized for. So it's not really optimized for like maximum entertainment value. It's optimized for maximum, like you're going to see every step in the process. So I think I'm going to copy these, and that'll be it. And then we'll read them in the synthesis session next. So let's do it. We got a lot of repetitive stuff, but that's what synthesis is for. Okay, great. So guys, if you stuck with me this long, thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will catch you on the next stream. I'll see you then.